This is the final word. Adam Collins and Jeff Lemon. It's season 17. It's episode 28. Jeff, we're bringing back doing some storytime stuff in the middle of the show. We haven't done it through most of the year, but we've got lots to get through, and we're going to give this a chance to live on our weekly show again. Not in great detail, but just a quick revisit on something that we got wrong in the past. Is that the plan?
Yes, just a short one, given that I did Michael Fallon's number recently, and It was 104, and it had to be Western Australian related. So I was looking at various 104s that might have been made in Western Australia in test matches or in one-day matches, and eventually I settled on the rather speculative fact that Adam Voges had made 104 one-day runs at the Wacker in 2 innings. Or it might have been at the Perth, one at the Perth and one at the Wacker, I can't remember which.
Right.
In Perth, anyway, playing ODI cricket, the only 2 times he did it. I didn't expect it would be right, but I spent a lot of time talking about Sam Whiteman because he made 104 in a winning Shield final, their 3rd in a row, but he made that after the pledge came in. So Michael said, close, but not quite. A domestic score from a player who had promise, but it never came together for him. Reasons were more dickhead related than injury related.
Right.
It's from a 50-over game. This has to be Luke Pomersbach, who made one list day 100 for Western Australia, and it was 104, which came around in 2010. We've talked about the Pomersbach story before, about the fact that, he had a lot of issues during his career. He eventually quit the game citing mental health issues, but there was a lot of stuff around addiction and intoxication. And there's the famous story of him playing a T20 international for Australia when he was a call up from the crowd because Brad Hodge, who we talked about a lot on Storytime last time around, got injured in the warm up. And the sort of the sanitized version is that Pomersbach was parking his car when he got the call, and the other interpretations are that maybe he was already in the middle of a pretty big day when he was suddenly told that he'd be playing for Australia in a minute, and he didn't have any kit and he didn't have a shirt with his name on it, and he had to bat. He made 15 off 7 balls. I think went okay, hit a 6, fielded all right, did his job in the end. So the instincts kicked in, no matter what the context. But yeah, this 104 was in a one-day game in 2010 when the Mercantile Mutual, FAI Insurance, McDonald's, ING Cup was the Ford Ranger. And it was not in a season when Western Australia did anything very good. They finished near the bottom of the table. They lost a bunch of games in a row. When they won this game, their second last of the season, they were playing South Australia, kept them to 233, and then ran it down in 39 overs. And Pomers was 104 not out, batting at first drop, smacked him around a fair bit, 13 fours and a 6. And it was the highlight of his, I think he started playing for WA in around 06, so it was a way into his career, but it was a career that was marred a couple of times by different sort of physical altercations that got him accused of assault in a couple of different cases, and in India and in Australia, and drink driving and all kinds of troubled things. But yeah, that was a moment when it looked like things might be on the way up.
Yeah, look, I just go back to something from the book last year where Maxie said that when he was at the academy that it was just taken as read that Luke Pomersbach was going to be the Australian superstar. So this wasn't just a case of like a guy who had a bit of talent and could do certain things. They just all as a collective, as a group, thought, well, he's the guy in our generation who's going to go off and do special things. There was a few of them. Like, I don't think Philip Hughes was in the same academy intake as Maxie. He must have been a little bit later.
He was younger.
Yeah, but the way it all, with the sequencing, Maxie went a bit later. But anyway, the point is that from that crew, which had some incredible players in it, by the way, they just assumed it was him. And the other one, which is not bad trivia either, they thought Ben Dunk was going to be Ben Dunk and Pomersbach were going to be the 2 world beaters. So, of course, Dunk enjoyed a longer domestic career in the end. There's some similarities. This point was made to me on Discord a couple of weeks ago. I told briefly the story via Anna Forsyth of Dave Ayres, the emergency backup goalie on the Storytime show, about a dude who worked the Zamboni machine, effectively the ice hockey roller, who was brought out to be a goalie in an NHL game and did well. There's similarities to Pomersbach as far as being, dragged out of the crowd. There was a bloke who played for Hawthorn many years ago, great win on Friday night, by the way, what a way to start the season, who called Nick Stone, who was on Hawthorn's list as a defender, and he was on that day, they were doing a Mandarin commentary, a commentary back to China, and he spoke a bit of Mandarin. So he was, as a Hawthorn-listed footballer, never having played a senior game, he was basically a Box Hill player, was going to be doing commentary that day, and they had an injury in the warm-up, and they called for him, and he ended up making his AFL debut from the commentary box, not even the grandstand. I've not thought about Nick Stone in many years, but yeah. So there is a rich tradition of what happened to Pomersbach when he played his one and only international, which includes the Zamboni man, a former Hawthorn player from 20 years ago, and the West Australian batter.
I think it's remarkable enough to be a footy player who's doing the Mandarin commentary, let alone to then get a game and have to make your apologies to Beijing that you're not going to be able to be on the call. As, a big audience would have been tuned in. They would have been disappointed. They would have been looking forward to the insights from Box Hill. How's training go at Box Hill? How many times a week is it? Is Tuesdays and Thursdays? Or what do you do to rest up before a game? What do you think about the Werribee Zebras? There'd be so much that they'd be keen to know in Wuhan and Guangzhou, but they had to miss out because somebody needed to play off the halfback flank.
Right, so get your pledges in, patreon.com/thefinalword. We've had some really entertaining storytime eps of late. We've had the chance to enjoy those and appreciate the feedback on them. So the best way to do that is to pledge and get involved in Discord. And the Final Word cricket team, big announcement coming your way for those who are interested in these things. I think that's going to be the week after next we'll announce it. But a major event in the back half of the English summer, which will involve a number of Final Word cricketers and others as well. And the way to get involved in that ecosystem, patreon.com/thefinalword, which is the foundation stone of everything that we do here on the podcast, which includes, Jeff, running campaigns. Over the years, we've been bolshy about various things. Some of them come true, some of them don't. Something that we have been speaking about forever was the idea of them playing a Sesquicentennial Test match at the Melbourne Cricket Ground on the 11th of March 2027 to recognise 150 years of Test cricket in line with the centenary Test that was famously played in 1977, where the margin of 45 runs was the same as the first Test match in the March of 1877, one of the most beautiful quirks in cricket history. Well, we know it's happening. It's 2 years from today, which is exciting. But I must admit, I was deflated when I woke up this morning and read in a statement from Cricket Australia that this is going to be a pink ball Test match. It's going to be a day-night Test match. The reason given from CA is that March is not school holidays. But let's be fair, Dinkum. Let's be fair, Let's be real. It's about TV rights. It's about to get as much money as possible from prospective UK broadcasters, because more of the game will be played not in the middle of the night there. And of course, Indian fans will get to watch this Test match at a better time than starting at 4:30 or 5 in the morning if the match is played day night. So let's be really clear about this. It's not about people coming to the game. The game is going to be spectacularly well attended for all the obvious reasons. This will be one of the great celebrations of Test cricket at a difficult time for the future of the game. We spend so much time forecasting what cricket might look like in 5 or 10 years internationally, especially what the World Test Championship might look like. Well, this will be a chance to look back and indulge in what is such a beautiful thing and the lineage and the history and so on. But the game will be played at a different time of day, and we'll get into some of this in a moment. Jeff, your initial impression when you saw this press release?
Pretty similar to you. I think just a big breath out and why, of all of the things that you need to do, why this? Now, I'm going to say early on in the piece, before I get accused of being too backward-looking, too stuck in the mud, whatever it is, innovation, great. Trying different things in the sport to see what works, great. The experimentation of the pink ball Test is fine. I think we were supportive of it on this show very early in the life of this show at the end of 2015 when it first happened at Adelaide when New Zealand played there. And it was a cracker of a game. And some of the day-night tests are great and some of them are dross. And some daytime tests are great and some of them are dross. This is the nature of the sport. Not every test match will be amazing in its conclusion. Many of them are very one-sided. You have to appreciate the aspects of the sport within the contest as well as the contest itself. There's nothing wrong with trying new things. There's nothing wrong with being willing to take some risks. But fundamentally, you say, why are you playing this match, this specific match, this very particular match? This is a an anniversary. This is the 150th year anniversary. It's significant. It's one of the few significant 150 anniversaries of anything, not normally a very meaningful milestone, but years are years, and 50 years is a long time. So why is it being played? It's being played to have a connection with the history of the game. It's being played to try to replicate in some way the feel of what happened 150 years ago and what happened 50 years ago, to draw a line of connection to the physical space, to the MCG, as changed and as different as it is to what would have been there in the open rolling flats of Yarra Park in 1877, and as different as the world was then, to have some sense of connection to that. So if you're trying to have that connection, why not at least keep the same the things that can be the same, which is that it would be played in daylight hours. It would have that feeling of an older kind of test match, because the ecosystem can contain both. You can have daytime cricket and day-night test cricket, and they can both happen, and they do both happen. And there's a reason that even when Cricket Australia play an Ashes series, they have one day-night test, or they had two the other time, the last time it happened, because one happened in Hobart. But they still fundamentally, the day test is the default method. Why not use that default method? And the line that it's so that people will come, absolute nonsense. You can schedule it. You will have days over a weekend. People will come to this game. People came to the game in 1977, and schools existed in 1977. I'm not sure if anybody's checked this and gone back to look at it. There was an education system in Australia in 1977. There were children who attended school, and yet they still managed to get a big crowd and to have people come in to pay attention. The Queen rocked up. Didn't matter that it was a daytime thing. Wasn't actually busy. Was able to come in on day 5, wasn't it?
Part of the reason players. Part of the reason the Queen was able to greet the players is because the test did go to its 15th session. Yes. And that's part of this. But yeah, I like what you say there about the connection to it and trying to acknowledge the history of the game. I know this will make a lot of American obsessives happy. I get that. I know that the way Australia's sporting culture is, it's drifting more and more in that direction. I understand that. I know that I sit outside of that conversation in many respects, because I push back against that in footy, and I'll push back against it in cricket as well. But can't we just for once focus on the actual sport, on the 22 yards in the middle and the watching and the participation of that? We know that on average, day-night test matches finish quicker. Why would we want to shorten this event? The chances of it reaching a 5th day, there have been day-night test matches that have gone into a 5th day. Of course there have been, but taken as a whole, fewer pink ball test matches go the journey. The majority of them finish on day 3 or day 4. And isn't this the one test match where the festivities around it are just as important? Like in 1977, when Frank Tyson famously summed up in that beautiful piece of television, the Olympic Games of Cricket. Stunning piece of oration. I recommend it. It's on YouTube.
Yep.
And people will say that, well, all the festivities around this can happen the next morning. They can happen at brunches and so on. But we know the lived experience is that it doesn't happen that way. How do we know? You and I have covered practically every single day-night test match that's been in Australia. And all it does, it extends the playing bit of the day. And by that, I mean, people just go to the ground earlier, be it professionals or people going to the sport to watch. You enjoy more time at the ground. That's what actually happens. People are there for the first ball and they get there well earlier. This is about not just the 22 players who are going to be there that week playing in the game. It's about, presumably, all the players who will be flown out from England and flown in from other parts of Australia in the very same way they were in 1977, which was such a special part of that, all of them staying across the road at the Hilton Hotel. This is for them as well. It isn't just about getting as many people watching on TV as possible, because, I know as a kid, and you did as well, Jeff, going to day-night cricket as a youngster means that you are limited in how long you can stay for, because there are routines, and people will say, well, they might stay up for their one day of the year. It's the argument used for a night grand final. It won't happen. Not in the same way that it would if it were a day game. I'm not sure whether it clashes with Labor Day weekend, but at the very least, 2 days of this will be scheduled for a Saturday and a Sunday, the way the calendar breaks out. But it may well be that we don't reach Sunday if it's a pink ball test match, because
that's what I'm saying.
That's the fourth day of the test. It starts on a Thursday.
It will be that weekend, it looks like. So the 11th is a Thursday. So a day-night test starting on a Thursday is a great chance to finish sometime around 6 p.m. on Saturday, which means you lose your Saturday night of it, you lose your Sunday of it. You don't, if it is one of those fast-forward sort of games where wickets fall pretty cheaply, then you might not get the Sunday at all. And of course that can happen
in any game,
for any game.
Exactly.
But the likelihood you want to play the odds here and say, well, if it starts on a Thursday and you start it during the day, you've got a better chance of a long day and a Sunday afternoon and all of the festivities that can happen around that. Because the best way to build those festivities would be around day 3 and 4, would be around using that weekend, which, I don't know, it just seems like such a waste of an opportunity for the sake of wanting to make it as easy as possible to make TV networks happy.
I want to be really clear about this. Any test can finish inside 3 days. It's just that it's more likely to happen with the conditions. And players talk about this. They know when they front up for a pink ball match, the conditions are harder, wickets fall with greater regularity, especially after duck. There's no problem with that. We have pink ball test matches every summer, and I don't think we've ever been negative about that. I doubt I've ever said a negative word about playing day-night test cricket in Australia. But this test match is meant to be different. And, you know, it's also, I mentioned the older cricketers before. What you're asking there is of probably cricketers who are or former cricketers in their 70s and 80s who will come out for this incredibly special moment in their lives. How are they going to be travelling at 10 o'clock at night or 10:30 at night when stumps are called? It's different. It changes the vibe entirely. And yet there might be a brunch or
and
so.
you're not recognising what they did. You're not recognising the kind of game that they played because you're giving them a version of it that's not recognisable. So if you want to have that link, if you want to have those former players there, that would be a mark of respect to them, would be for them to be able to sit down and watch a day of test cricket that in some ways resembles the kind of game they used to play.
Yeah, all of that and more. So deeply disappointing. And I come back to my first point. Why is this decision being made? To exploit as much, and that's perfectly reasonable, to exploit a market to make as much money as you can. I get all of that. I understand the reasoning for it. But I think that for this particular week, there were other reasons that outstripped every last dollar being wrung out of this game. It's more important than that. It is special. It will be special anyway. But I'm so desperately sad that there will be my dad's first ever day of test cricket. As we've talked about on the show, it was going along in 1977 and watching David Hooks hit those 5 fours in a row. There will be fewer young kids who are able to attend this test match. That's just the way these things break with nighttime stuff. I'm talking younger kids here. Some more of them might be able to watch it on the telly, and that's not for nothing. I'm not saying it's a complete write-off, but, let's be real about why this is. It's about the Indian TV market, about the UK TV market, and the number of people who will watch in Australia that third session after work. It's got nothing to do with the cricket, and it's a shame because it feels to me like this is the one week that should be 100% about the game, about the cricket, about the players, about the celebration, and some of the gloss will be taken off that clearly by
and Cricket Australia should be clear about whose decision this was. Somebody should step up for this and say, how did this get approved? Who voted for it? This should be known.
Yeah, and Todd Greenberg, it's a tough one, 11 days into the job, having to cop pelters from us and others. I'm sure there'll be pelters in publications, but that's okay. I'm sure this decision was taken before Todd started, and we look forward to having a long and productive relationship with him because he is a genuine cricket person. I've got no doubt that he will make decisions in the best interest of the game, but it's his job to take the questions on this, and he will, I suppose, in the fullness of time. Jeff, before we leave the MCG, just a quick note, David Studham's finished up as the boss of the MCC library after 3 decades. Gideon Haig wrote about this beautifully today, what a massive loss Dave will be. He's retired. He posted on Instagram, this is primarily to take care of his health. There's a quirk here, there's an NDA that's involved as well that Gideon wrote about, which makes it a bit weird, and he also referred to the fact that at Dave's going away do last week, they had a dinner where there wasn't sort of what you'd expect. It wasn't like the senior top brass of the Melbourne Cricket Club there to celebrate Dave's unbelievable contribution. I believe he wanted a quiet, low-key dinner, but I think this is one of those ones where you just ignore the person, right? Like if someone says they want a low-key dinner to celebrate 3 decades of exemplary service, don't you just say, yeah, okay, mate, and just ignore them and have the big celebration anyway? Am I reading that correctly?
Well, people like librarians generally, I'd say if you could generalize about groups of people, but generally understated types, not the ones seeking the limelight. So, some people who are modest will, of course, a lot of people will say, oh, don't make a fuss. I don't want that to happen, but it doesn't mean that they don't deserve a fuss. And it doesn't mean they don't deserve as big a recognition as they could get. The MCC library is a treasure. We make a point of trying to record there when we can during test matches. We use their resources. We look at the displays that they put up every year. We chat to Dave and Trev at the library and about what it is that they're working on. We've gone to them for help on research projects so many times. They do a remarkable thing with that place. It's such a wonderful resource. And so, those kinds of people, the archivists, the note takers, the record keepers, especially in a kind of age where things like, we should slash thousands of public service jobs, the kind of chat that's going around in the phony war of the campaign for the election that hasn't been called yet in Australia, that they're taking their lead on from the United States, is always, people in useless office jobs pushing papers doing nothing. A lot of those sort of jobs are these kind of jobs, are jobs about record keeping, about understanding who we are as a group of people based on where we've come from. And that relates to things like the 150th anniversary test as well, being connected to history and to legacy. And so the people who do that work don't get any plaudits. They don't get asked up on the dais to make presentations of trophies. They don't get the cameras on them when they're jumping around in the crowd. They live lives of service to a community rather than to themselves, and that should be recognised and respected against their instincts towards being taciturn and being low profile, I think, when the time comes.
And you can rattle through all of the achievements across 30 years that Dave worked there, not least like moving the whole thing over to the new MCG Northern Stand when it was opened in 2006, which was a mighty effort. But it's the love and the care. And it's on a personal front, really. I know when I started in cricket, I used to use the library as my office, and like you could feel they were invested in me making it. You know what I mean? Like I remember when I went in there to write an obituary the day that Richie Beno passed away. Dave was there all day working with me because he wanted it to be like as good as it could be. He used to feature all my work in the front there in the display. So that's just like they've always followed what we do and been huge supporters of the research stuff that we do. But he and Trev have been massive parts of our lives. I always make a point of going back there as one of the first things I do whenever I'm in Melbourne. I went there this time last year during footy season. I'm like, I've got half an hour. I've just got to quickly nip into the G to see the guys. So look, he will be celebrated in various ways. Indeed, the piece on the MCC website does a lot of that heavy lifting. Mostly just wanted to say thank you to him and all the work that he's done. And I'm sure he'll still remain involved in the game, and not just the game, by the way. It's Olympic history, it's footy, it's everything that's happened at the MCG over such a long stretch of time, but especially cricket. What an absolute gem.
Yeah. So thanks, David, for all of the work, and hopefully things go well with health and with the rest of life into the future. We appreciate everything you've done. The Sheffield Shield, the Redbacks are top. They're going to host the final. They're on track for the double. Bharat's been over there pumping them up for years and years, and finally they're starting to believe it. There's self-belief coursing through their veins. You can't win the FA Cup, the Champions League, and the Premiership if you're a state cricket side, because the Big Bash got split off. So there is no triple, there's no treble, but they could do a double. They've won the One Day Cup, and they're going to host the Mr. Sheffield Shield final.
The rare domestic double. Yeah, they do. And look, they've earned the right through an outstanding victory over Victoria away from home at the Junction Oval over the weekend. So they knock off the Vicks by 4 wickets. So Victoria took a first innings lead here. They made 285 with young Campbell Kellaway, who we're all keeping an eye on, making 79. Henry Thornton, like all these players who have just emerged in the last couple of years. 4 for 42 in the first dig. He's only played 3 first-class games. Took 4 for in the one-day final a couple of weeks ago. Having a real say at the business end of the season. Jordan Buckingham 4 for as well. Then SA fall 2 runs short of first innings parity, 283 all out. McSweeney, the captain, top scoring was 60, solid through the list, 40s for Lehman. We'll come back to him in a moment. And Nielsen. Fergus O'Neill, though, 28.2 overs, 12 maidens, 5 for 51. There's very little more that man can do to put himself in the frame for international selection at some stage based on his numbers the last few years. Speaking of international selection, 4 for 53 for Boland. Back from Sri Lanka, straight back to doing what he always does best. Victoria, 297, second time around. Kellaway, top scoring for the second time in the match, making 77. Harry Dixon playing his, I reckon, third game, Jeff, made 76. So future's bright with Chris Rogers' young blokes coming through. We know that Chris has been determined to prepare Generation Next, and that's happening over the last couple of years. And Dixon and Kellaway are right in the middle of that. Liam Scott, who was the star of the One Day Cup, picked up Forfar, another of these breakout stars at age 24. 3 more for the aforementioned Thornton, giving him 7 for the match. All told, it left South Australia 300 for victory and to lock down a home Sheffield Shield final. And at one point, they're 3 for fuck all, right? So you can see how this could, we've seen this one before. Teams who have come ever so close and then they get their chance and then they fluff their lines. Well, in walks Jake Lehman, strums 105 not out. The majority of that was added with Liam Scott, who made 83, batting at 6 after his forfeit. What a story. They get there 6 wickets down. They had a little bit of a wobble with 45 or so runs to get, losing 2 wickets, but they steadied the job. Lehman got the 100. They beat Victoria in Melbourne to give the Vics their 3rd loss in a row, by the way, which moves them down to 5th. They can still make the final. More on that later. But South Australia will host it, Jeff. And the only question left, where's it going to be? And this is one of the great stories of the week, I reckon. So over the weekend, the Premier, Peter Malinauskas, has got involved and said, and the SACA have got involved, and the South Australian team management have gotten involved and said, hang on a minute, can we do this at Adelaide Oval? We just all took it as read that how could you possibly, due to the AFL season having already started. But Mally, as he said over the weekend, he was there in 96 racing down from school to watch the final session of the Shield final. He wants it there. He's a cricket nut, I assure you. Now, it's meant to be the 26th to the 30th of March, 5-day game being a Shield final. And the drop-ins are already gone, right? Already gone. Preparing for footy season. The Crows play there this weekend. Then Port play there on the 22nd of March. So the idea, if you shuffle the Shield final 2 days forward to the 24th and play between the 24th and the 28th, having a bump-in day on the 23rd, a bump-out day on the 29th, the Crows can still play on the 30th, and you get your Shield final. In this scenario, according to Alex Malcolm, they'll drop in one single pitch, which they're already preparing out the back in case they need to do it. They'll give the outfield a good old mow, because, of course, the grass is shorter for cricket than it is for footy, so they accept the fact that it'll be a slow outfield, but I guess a small price to pay. And then they'd make it free admission to make it a big celebration of South Australian cricket, like it was in 1996. And, remembering the last time the Sackers got to host it was at Glenelg in 2016. So this actually feels like, due to the fact that they've got longer lead time, having wrapped it up with a round to spare, like this compromise might get off the ground. How brilliant would this be? Slotting in a Shield final between 2 football matches.
Well, imagine a couple of things here. Imagine being flexible on scheduling. Like imagine saying, the 150th shouldn't be a day-night test. We fucked up. Sorry, we'll change that. Imagine being able to do that. Imagine football and cricket collaborating to that extent. Extraordinary. And then imagine Adelaide Oval with a single strip, a single drop-in the middle of that expanse. It'd be like every suburban oval with a synthetic little stripe down the middle of it. With those, you get those real skinny ones that have the wings that sort of at the bowling approaches, and then the whole strip itself feels like it's about 2 feet wide. It's like bowling on a tightrope, and it always gives me the yips because it's something about having the wings just makes me feel like it's narrower than it is, and it's harder and harder to hit the strip. So it'd be like that. It'd be extraordinary. Yeah, just the one. You wouldn't even need the truck to drop in the strip. They bring in those huge cranes on the MCG to drop in the wicket square. You could probably bring it in on the back of a Hilux if you just had the one. just tip it off the end. Set 10 blokes off the back of a truck and would do it just fine. This is. I hope it happens. I mean, it sounds like a dream to actually get all of the different parts together to get it approved. But if political leadership's on side and there's an appetite for it, why not?
Yeah, this is what I love about having a premier who's a sports nut. And it's not unusual, right? But having a cricket person running the show is like, no, fuck this. We're going to do this. And trying to get all the stakeholders together. You've got amazing political capital over there in South Australia as well. So if anyone's going to be able to pull off a stunt like this, it's not a stunt, but pull off a manoeuvre like this, it's Malinauskas. So wish him well on that front. If you're wondering, the last time that there was a Shield final hosted on a footy ground, air quotes, was in 2012. A shared ground, I mean by that, was when the Gabba hosted the Shield final. The Vics hosted at Alice Springs, at Hobart. New South Wales hosted at Canberra. Queensland, a couple of them at AB Field. And, it used to be the Shield final was earlier in March before the Big Bash League. So back in the old days, the Shield final was around about this time of the year. And in that
before
era,
the
footy
AFL
season,
or before
the footy season, because the footy season used to start in April.
You said
round
Big
one.
Bash, so.
Oh, yeah, Big Bash squeezed it. So after the Big Bash came in,
I thought
the season
before
gets...
the Big Bash. I was confused. Before the Big Bash pushed it out, it used to be.
That's right. Yeah, so you used to be able to get the Shield final in around this time of year, and AFL started, last weekend of March or the first weekend of April. But with the AFL on their expansion mission and round one starting on the 8th of March, outrageous. It means that they won't get to start on
hot here, by the way. I mean, it's been like mid-30s all week, and they're like, let's play footy. No, wrong, incorrect, wrong time.
Let cricket have its grounds. Anyway, so that's the story in South Australia. Speaking of teams that are vying for that spot, crucial 9-wicket victory away from home for Queensland over Tasmania at Hobart there to leapfrog into second. So they started slowly, Queensland, but they're a game away this week. They made 425 for 9 in their first dig. Usman Khawaja, what an inclusion. 127, having made a double ton, in Sri Lanka a couple of weeks ago. Tassie then rolled for 161, a massive collapse. Nisa, 6 for 37, keeps himself within touching distance of another chance to play for Australia with form at this time of year, I guess. Tasmania following on all out 345. There was 4 half centuries there, including an unbeaten 64 for Big Bo Webster. Queensland set 82. They win at 1 down. Khawaja 33 not out at the end. So that's the Queensland story. They're second. Tasmania are the only team eliminated. They're 6th. And in the middle of all of that, at the Wacker, WA drew with New South Wales. Now, a bit going on here. So this looked like it was going to be a result game. WA all out 196. New South Wales all out 261. Curtis Patterson, 86 more runs, third most in the comp this year.
Get him on the chopper. He's flying in. He's going to rappel down like a paramedic into the ocean. He's going to just drop down off a cable into the Australian Test team.
710 runs at 64 this season, only behind the Hotel, Hilton, Cartwright, and Jake Weatherald. We'll come back to Cartwright in a sec. So, Patterson holds things together, gets them a first innings lead. Lance Morris, 5 for 26 from 20.3 overs. I mentioned the prospects of Fergus O'Neill. Well, Morris, that'll have the side that's purring.
26 runs from 20 overs.
Yeah, for a bloke who's out and out quick. So, now he's fit again. He's doing the business. WA racked up 4 for 346 declared in their second innings. That man, Hilton Cartwright, 171 not out to be the top of the country for runs. Cameron Bancroft, 86. New South Wales were set to 82. Now, they had 55 overs. In modern cricket, most teams are having a dart at that. And with Constance at the top, you could be... And he played one extravagant shot where he backed away to Morris and flayed him over point. But then they lost wickets. They put it away, 4 for 130 when they shook hands. Constance ended up with 50 from 107 after making 6 in the first dig. That's good to see.
Maybe that's good for him.
I think that's really good for him. Having to bat out a draw, it might be the best thing that's happened to him in 6 months. I know everything on Boxing Day, but just the discipline of needing to get them to safe harbour, and he effectively did that. So 1 round to go. That starts in a couple of days' time. Tassie, New South Wales, SA, Queensland, WA, Vics, and the 4 teams beneath South Australia. Queensland on 36.5, 36.8. Let's do round numbers. Queensland 37, New South Wales 35, WA 34, and Victoria 32. So in any scenario, there are scenarios where any of those 4 teams could end up in the Shield final against South Australia. So a great end to the domestic season coming in Australia.
Playing on the single strip at Adelaide Oval. It's going to happen. We have to believe. Time for our last break, and then a few more curiosities to rattle through.